Purport by my grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. One can very easily understand that the mind is constantly flickering, changing in the quality of its thinking, feeling, and willing. This is explained by Arjuna in Bhagavad Gita 6.34. Chanchalam na chanchalam hi mana Krishna pramati balavad dridham dasyaham nigraham manye vayur eva suduskaram. The mind is chanchala, flickering, and it charges and it changes very strongly. Therefore, Arjuna admitted that controlling the mind is not at all possible. This would be as difficult as controlling the wind. For example, if one were in a boat moving according to the wind on a river or the sea, and the wind were uncontrollable, the tilting boat would be very much disturbed and extremely difficult to control. It might even capsize. Therefore, in the Bhava Samudra, the ocean of mental speculation and transcendental transmigration to different types of bodies, one must first control the mind. By regulative practice, one can control the mind, and this is the purpose of the yoga system, Abhyasa Yoga Yuktena. But there is a chance of the failure with the yoga system, especially in this age of Kali, because the yoga system uses artificial means. If the mind is engaged in bhakti yoga, however, by the grace of Krishna, one can very easily control it. Therefore, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has recommended Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Nameva Kevalam, Kalona one should chant the holy name of the Lord constantly, for the holy name of the Lord is non-different from Hari, the Supreme Person. By chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra constantly, one can fix the mind on the lotus feet of Krishna. Savai Mana Krishna Padara Vindayo. And in this way, achieve the perfection of yoga. Otherwise, the flickering mind will hover on the platform of mental speculation for sense enjoyment, and one will have to transmigrate from one type of body to another because the mind is trained only in relation to the material elements, or, in other words, to sense gratification, which is false. Maya Sukaya Varam Udvahato Vimudhan. Bhagavatam 7.9.13. Rascals, Vimudhan, being controlled by mental speculation, make huge arrangements by which to enjoy life temporarily. But they must give up the body at the time of death, when everything is taken away by Krishna's external energy. Mrityu sarva haraschaham. At that time, whatever one has created in this life is lost, and one must automatically accept a new body by the force of material nature. In this life, one may have constructed a very tall skyscraper. But in the next life, because of one's mentality, one may have to accept a body like that of a cat, a dog, a tree, or perhaps a demigod. Thus, the body is offered by the laws of material nature. Karanam gunasangasya sadasat yoni janmasu. Bhagavatam 13:22. The spirit soul takes birth in higher and lower species of life only because of his association with the three qualities of material nature: goodness, passion, and ignorance. Urdvam vichanti sattva sta, madhye tistanti rajasa, jagan ya guna vritti sta, adho gacchati tamasa. Those situated in the mode of goodness gradually go upward to the higher planets. Those in the mode of passion live on the earthly planets, and those in the mode of ignorance go down to the hellish worlds. Bhagavad Gita 14.18. In conclusion, the Krishna consciousness movement offers the topmost, the topmost welfare activity for human society. The saner section of human society must, therefore, take this movement very seriously for the benefit of all humanity. To save oneself from the repetition of birth and death, one must purify his consciousness. Sarvapadi vinirmuktam tatparatmena. Sorry. Tatparatmena nirmalam. One must be freed from all designations. I am an American. I am Indian. I am this. I am that. And come to the platform of understanding that Krishna is the original master and we are his eternal servants. When the senses are purified and engaged in Krishna's service, one achieves the highest perfection. Rishikena, Rishikesha, Sevanam Bhaktir Uchyate. The Krishna consciousness movement is a movement of bhakti yoga. Vairagya Vidya Nija Bhakti Yoga. By following the principles of this movement, one becomes disassociated from material mental concoctions and is established on the original platform of the eternal relationship between the living entity and the Supreme Personality of Godhead as servant and master. This, in summary, is the purpose of the Krishna consciousness movement. Okay, very profound statement. Text 43. When the luminaries in the sky, such as the moon, the sun, and the stars, are reflected in liquids like oil or water. They appear to be of different shapes, sometimes round, sometimes long, and so on. Because of the movements of the wind, similarly, when the living entity, the soul, is absorbed in the materialistic thoughts, he accepts various manifestations as his own identity because of ignorance. In other words, one is bewildered by mental concoctions because of agitation from the material modes of nature. Period. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. This verse gives a very good example by which to understand the different positions of the eternal soul, the spiritual, by position of the eternal spiritual soul in the material world, and how the soul takes on different bodies. Dehantara prapti. The moon is stationary and is one, but when it is reflected in water or oil, it appears to take different shapes because of the movements of the wind. Similarly, the soul is the eternal servant of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But when put into the material modes of nature, it takes different bodies, sometimes as a demigod, sometimes as a man, a dog, a tree, and so on. By the influence of Maya, the illusory potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the living entity, thinks that he is this person, that person, American, Indian, cat, dog, tree, or whatever. This is called Maya. When one is freed from this bewilderment and understands that the soul does not belong to any shape of this material world, one is situated in the spiritual platform, Brahma Bhuta. This realization is sometimes explained as nirakara, or formlessness. This formlessness, however, does not mean that the soul has no form. The soul has form, but the external agitating form he has acquired because of material contamination is false. Similarly, God is also described as nirakara, which means that God has no material form but is Satchit Ananda Vigraha. The living entity is part and parcel of the Supreme Satchit Ananda Vigraha, but his material forms are temporary or illusory. Both the living entity and the Supreme Lord have original spiritual forms, Satchit Ananda Vigraha, but the Lord, the Supreme, does not change his form. The Lord appears as he is, whereas the living entity appears because material nature forces him to accept different forms. When the living entity receives these different forms, he identifies with them and not with his original spiritual form. As soon as the living entity returns to his original spiritual form and understanding, he immediately surrenders to the Supreme that surrenders to the supreme form, the personality of Godhead. This is explained in Bhagavad Gita 7.19. Bahunam janmanamante janavam mam prapadyanta. When the living entity, after many, many births in different forms, returns to his original form of Krishna consciousness, he immediately surrenders onto the lotus feet of the supreme form, Krishna. This is liberation, as the Lord says in Bhagavad Gita 18:54. Brahmabhuta prasanatma nasochati nakanchati samak sarve subhutesu madbhaktim labdate param. One who is thus transcendently situated at once realizes the supreme Brahman and becomes fully joyful. He never laments nor desires to have anything. He is equally disposed to every living entity. In that state, he attains pure devotional service unto me. Surrender unto the supreme form is the result of bhakti. This bhakti, or understanding of one's own position, is the complete liberation. As long as one is under an impersonal understanding of the absolute truth, he is not in pure knowledge, but must still struggle for pure knowledge. Kleso dikaritas te sum avyakta shakta chetasam. Bhagavad Gita 12.5. Although one may be spiritually advanced if one is attached to the impersonal feature of the absolute truth, one must still work very hard, as indicated by the words Klesa dikaritara, which means greater suffering. A devotee, however, easily attains his original position as a spiritual form and understands the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his original form. Krishna himself explains the forms of the living entities in the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita, wherein he clearly says to Arjuna that he, Arjuna, and all other living entities who were previously in their original forms are separated individual identities. They were individuals in the past, they are now situated in individuality, and in the future, they will all continue to maintain their individual forms. The only difference is that the conditioned living entity appears in various material forms, whereas Krishna appears in his original spiritual form. Unfortunately, those who are not advanced in spiritual knowledge think that Krishna is like one of them and that his form is like their material forms. Avajanantimam mudha manasim tanam asritam. Bhagavad Gita 9.11. Krishna is never puffed up by material knowledge and is therefore called Achyuta, whereas the living entity falls down and living entities fall down and are agitated by material nature. This is the difference between the Supreme Lord and the living entities. In this connection, it is to be noted that Vasudeva, who was situated in a transcendental position, advised Kamsa not to commit further sinful activities. Kamsa, a representative of the demons, was always ready to kill Krishna or God, whereas Vasudeva represents a transcendentally situated person to whom Krishna is born. Vasudeva is the son of Vasudeva.
No, Vasudeva is the son of Vasudeva.
Yeah, Vasudeva is the son of Vasudeva. Vasudeva wanted his brother-in-law, Kamsa, to refrain from sinful act of killing his sister, since the result of being agitated by material nature would be that Kamsa would have to accept a body in which to suffer again and again. Elsewhere, in Srimad Bhagavatam 5.5.4, Rishabhadeva also says, Na sadhu manye yata atmano yam asan api klesita asadeha. Again. As long as the living entity is entangled in the fruitive activities of so-called happiness and distress, he will receive a particular type of body in which to endure the three kinds of suffering due to material nature. Tri tapa yantra, yantrana. An intelligent person, therefore, must free himself from the influence of the three modes of material nature and revive his original spiritual body by engaging in the service of the Supreme Person, Krishna. As long as one is materially attached, one must accept the process of birth, death, old age, and disease. One is therefore advised that an intelligent person, instead of being entangled in so-called good and bad fruitive activities, should engage his life in advancing in Krishna consciousness so that instead of accepting another material body, tyakva deham punarjanma naiti, he will return home back to Godhead. Text 44. Therefore, since envious, impious activities cause a body in which one suffers in the next life, why should one act impiously? Considering one's welfare, one should not envy anyone, for an envious person must always fear harm from his enemies, either in this life or in the next. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Instead of being inimical toward other living entities, one should act piously by engaging in the service of the Supreme Lord, thus avoiding a fearful situation both in this life and in the next. In this regard, the following moral instruction by the great politician Janakya Pandita is very meaningful. Tyaja durjana sam Sargam, Vaja Sadhu Samargamam, Kuru Punyam, Aho Tatram, Smara Nityam, Anityatam. One should give up the company of devils, demons, and non devotees, and should always associate with devotees and saintly persons. One should always act piously, thinking that this life is temporary and not be attached to temporary happiness and distress. The Krishna consciousness movement is teaching all human society this principle of becoming Krishna conscious and thus solving the problems of life forever. Jakvadeham Punarjanma Naiti Mam Eti Sarjuna. Text 45. As your younger sister, this poor girl, Devaki, is like your own daughter and deserves to be affectionately maintained. You are merciful, and therefore you should not kill her. Indeed, she deserves your affection. Text 46. Shisaka Uvacha. Evam sa samavir vedar bodhya manopi daruna. Na nya vartata korravya purushadan anuvata. Sukadeva Goswami continued, O best of the Kuru dynasty, Kamsa was fiercely cruel and was actually a follower of the Rakshasas. Therefore, he could be neither pacified nor terrified by the good instructions given by Vasudeva. He did not care about the results of sinful activities, either in this life or in the next. Text 47. When Vasudeva saw that Kamsa was determined to kill his sister, Devaki, he thought to himself very deeply. Considering the imminent danger of death, he thought of another plan to stop Kamsa. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Although Vasudeva saw the imminent danger that his wife Devaki would be killed, he was convinced of his welfare because at his birth the demigods had played drums and kettle drums. He therefore attempted another way to save Devaki. Text 48. Mityur buddhi mata yo yavad buddhi valodayam yadi aso na parapate nivartata na parado sti dehina. As long as he has intelligence and bodily strength, an intelligent person must try to avoid death. This is the duty of every embodied person. But if death cannot be avoided in spite of one's endeavors, a person facing death commits no offense. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. It is natural for a person facing untimely death to try his best to save himself. This is one's duty. Although death is sure, everyone should try to avoid it and not meet death without opposition because every living soul is by nature eternal. Because death is a punishment imposed in the condemned life of material existence, the Vedic culture is based on avoiding death. Tyakva deham punarjanma 90. Everyone should try to avoid death and rebirth by cultivating spiritual life and should not submit to death without struggling to survive. One should not try. One who is not trying to stop death is not an intelligent human being. Because Devaki was face to face with imminent death, it was Vasudeva's duty to save her. As he was trying his best to do so, he therefore considered another way to approach Kamsa so that Devaki could be saved. Okay. Vasudeva considered by delivering all my sons to Kamsa, who is death personified, I shall save the life of Devaki. Perhaps Kamsa will die before my sons take birth, or since he is already destined to die at the hands of my son, one of my sons may kill him. For the time being, let me promise to hand over my sons so that Kamsa will give up this immediate threat, and if in due course of time Kamsa dies, I shall have nothing to fear. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Vasudeva wanted to save the life of Devaki by promising to deliver his sons to Kamsa. In the future, he thought, Kamsa may die, or I may not beget any sons. Even if a son is born and I deliver him to Kamsa, Kamsa may die at his hands. For by providence, anything could happen. It is very difficult to understand how things are managed by providence. Thus, Vasudeva decided that he would promise to deliver his sons to the hands of Kamsa in order to save Devaki from the imminent danger of death. 651. When a fire, for some unseen reason, leaps over one piece of wood and sets fire to the next, the reason is destiny. Similarly, when a living being accepts one kind of body and leaves aside another, there is no other reason than unseen destiny. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. When there is fire in a village, the fire sometimes jumps over one house and burns another. Similarly, when there is a forest fire, the fire sometimes jumps over one tree and catches another. Why this happens, no one can say. One may set forth some imaginary reason why the nearest tree or house did not catch fire, whereas a tree or house in a distant place did. But actually, the reason is destiny. This reason also applies to the transmigration of the soul, by which a prime minister in one life may become a dog in the next. The work of unseen destiny cannot be ascertained by practical experimental knowledge, and therefore one must be satisfied by reasoning that everything is done by supreme providence, meaning by the mercy of Krishna. Text 52. After thus considering the matter as far as his knowledge would allow, Vasudeva submitted his proposal to the sinful Kamsa with great respect. Text 53. Vasudeva's mind was full of anxiety because his wife was facing danger, but in order to please the cruel, shameless, and sinful Kamsa, he externally smiled and spoke to him as follows. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Sometimes one must act duplicitously in a dangerous position, as Vasudeva did to save his wife. The material world is complicated, and to execute one's duties, one cannot avoid adopting such diplomacy. Vasudeva did everything possible to save his wife for the sake of begetting Krishna. This indicates that one may act duplicitously for the purpose of saving Krishna and his interests. According to the arrangement already foretold, Krishna was to appear through Vasudeva and Devaki to kill Kamsa. Vasudeva, therefore, had to do everything to save the situation. Although all the events were prearranged by Krishna, a devotee must try his best to serve the purpose of Krishna. Krishna himself is all powerful, but it is not that a devotee should therefore sit idly and leave everything to him. This instruction is also found in Bhagavad Gita. Although Krishna was doing everything for Arjuna, Arjuna never sat down idly as a non-violent gentleman. Rather, he tried his best to fight the battle and be victorious. Text 54. Vasudeva said, O best of the sober, you have nothing to fear from your sister Devaki because of what you have heard from the unseen omen. The cause of death will be her son. Therefore, I promise that when she gives birth to the sons from whom your fear has arisen, I shall deliver them all unto your hands. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Kamsa feared Devaki's existence because after her 8th pregnancy, she would give birth to a son who would kill him. Vasudeva, therefore, to assure his brother-in-law the utmost safety, promised to bring him all the sons. He would not wait for the 8th son, but from the very beginning would deliver to the hand of Kamsa all the sons to which Devaki would give birth. This was the most liberal proposed then offered by Vasudeva to
Proposition.
proposition offered by Vasudeva to Kamsa. Text 55. Srila Sukadeva Goswami continued. Kamsa agreed to the logical arguments of Vasudeva, and having full faith in Vasudeva's words, he refrained from killing his sister. Vasudeva, being pleased with Kamsa, pacified him further and entered his own house. Purport. Although Kamsa was a sinful demon, he believed that Vasudeva would never deviate from his word. The character of a pure devotee like Vasudeva is such that even so great a demon as Kamsa firmly believed in his words and was satisfied. Yasyasti bhakti bhagavati akinchana sarvar gunais tatra samasate sura. Bhagavatam 5:18-12. All good attributes are present in a devotee, so much so that even Kamsa believed in Vasudeva's words without a doubt. Text 56. Each year thereafter, in due course of time, Devaki, the mother of God and all the demigods, gave birth to a child. Thus she bore 8 sons, one after another, and a daughter named Subhadra. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The spiritual master is sometimes glorified as Sarva Deva Mayo Guru. Bhagavatam 11:17-27. By the grace of the Guru, the spiritual master, one can understand the different kinds of devas. The word deva refers to God, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the original source of all the demigods, who are also called devas. In Bhagavad Gita 10.2, the Lord says, Aham adirhi devanam. I am the source of all the devas. The Supreme Lord, Vishnu, the original person, expands in different forms. Tad Aikshata Bahu Shyam, Chandogya Upanishad 6.2.3. He alone has expanded into many. Advaitam, Achyutam, Anadim, Ananta Rupam. Brahma Samhita 5:33. There are different grades of forms known as Swamsa and Vibhinamsa. The Swamsa expansions, or Vishnu Tattva, are the Supreme Personality of Godhead, whereas the Vibhinamsa are Jiva Tattva, who are part and parcel of the Lord. Mamaivam so, Jiva Loke, Jiva Bhuta Sanatana. If we accept Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead and worship him, all the parts and expansions of the Lord are automatically worshipped. Sarvar Manam Achute. Bhagavatam 4:31-14. Krishna is known as Achyuta. Sanayor Ubayor Madhe Ratam Stapayam Me Chuta. By worshiping Achyuta, Krishna, one automatically worships all the demigods. There is no need of separately worshiping either the Vishnu Tattva or Jiva Tattva. If one concentrates upon Krishna, one worships everyone. Therefore, because Mother Devaki gave birth to Krishna, she is described here as Sarva Devata. Text 57. Vasudeva was very much disturbed by fear of becoming a liar by breaking his promise. Thus, with great pain, he delivered his firstborn son, named Kirtiman, into the hand of Kamsa. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. In the Vedic system, as soon as a child is born, especially a male child, the father calls for learned brahmanas, and according to the description of the child's horoscope, the child is immediately given a name. This ceremony is called Namakarana. There are 10 different samskaras, or reformatory methods, adopted in the system of Varnashrama. And the name-giving ceremony is one of them. Although Vasudeva's first son was to be delivered into the hands of Kamsa, the name Karna uh, ceremony was performed, and thus the child was named Kirtiman. Such names are given immediately after birth. Text 58. What is painful for the saintly persons who strictly adhere to the truth? How could there not be independence for pure devotees who know the Supreme Lord as the substance? What deeds are forbidden for persons of the lowest character, and what cannot be given up for the sake of Lord Krishna by those who have fully surrendered at his lotus feet? Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Since the eighth son of Devaki was to kill Kamsa, one might ask what the need was for Vasudeva to deliver the firstborn child. The answer is that Vasudeva had promised Kamsa that he would deliver all the children born of Devaki. Kamsa, being an asura, did not believe that the eighth child would kill him. He took it for granted that he might be killed by any of the children of David. Vasudeva, therefore, to save Devaki, promised to give Kamsa every child, whether male or female. From another point of view, Vasudeva and Devaki were very pleased when they understood that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, would come as their eighth son. Vasudeva, a pure devotee of the Lord, was eager to see Krishna appear as his child from the eighth pregnancy of Devaki. Therefore, he wanted to deliver all the children quickly so that the eighth turn would come and Krishna would appear. He begot one child every year so that Krishna's turn to appear would come as soon as possible. Text 59. My dear King Parikshit, when Kamsa saw that Vasudeva, being situated in truthfulness, was completely equal poised in giving him a child, he was very happy. Therefore, with a smiling face, he spoke as follows. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The word samatvam is very significant in this verse. Samatvam refers to one who is always equipoised, unaffected by either happiness or distress. Vasudeva was so steadily equipoised that he did not seem in the least agitated when delivering his firstborn child into the hands of Kamsa to be killed. In Bhagavad Gita 256, it is said, Dukesu anudvigna mana sukesu vigita spriha. In the material world, one should not be very eager to be happy, nor should one be very much disturbed by material distress. Lord Krishna advised Arjuna, Matcha sprasastaponteya sitosna sukadupitaha agama paino nityastam statiksasva bharata. O son of Kunti, the non-permanent appearance of happiness and distress, and their disappearance in due course of time, and in due course, are like the appearance and disappearance of winter and summer season. They arise from sense perception, all Skyan of Bharata, and one must learn to tolerate them without being disturbed. Bhagavad Gita 2.14. The self-realized soul is never disturbed by so-called distress or happiness, and this is especially true of an exalted devotee like Vasudeva, who showed this by his practical example. Vasudeva was not at all disturbed when delivering his first child to Kamsa to be killed. Wow. I don't know if I could do that. Text 60. O Vasudeva, you may take back your child and go home. I have no fear of your first child. It is the eighth child of you and Devaki I am concerned with, because that is the child by whom I am destined to be killed. Oh, now see, that's good. Not going to kill all the first 7 kids. Text 61. Vasudeva agreed and took his child back home. But because Kamsa had no character and no self-control, Vasudeva knew that he could not rely on Kamsa's word. Yeah, in other words, Kamsa is very easily can become a liar. Text 62 to 63. The inhabitants of Vrindavana, headed by Nanda Maharaja and including his associate cowherd men and their wives, were none but denizens of the heavenly planets. O Maharaj Parikshit, best of the descendants of Bharata, and so too were the descendants of the Vrishni dynasty, headed by Vasudeva, and Devaki, and the other women of the dynasty of Yadav, the friends, relatives, and well-wishers of both Nanda Maharaja and Vasudeva, and even those who externally appeared to be followers of Kamsa, were all demigods. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. As previously discussed, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu, informed Lord Brahma that Lord Krishna would personally descend to mitigate the suffering on the earth. The Lord ordered all the denizens of the heavenly planet to take birth in different families of the Yadu and Vrishni dynasties and in Vrindavan. Now, this verse informs us that all the family and friends of the Yadu dynasty, the Vrishni dynasty, Nanda Maharaja, and the Gopas descended from the heavenly planets to see the pastimes of the Lord. As confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 4.8, the Lord's pastimes consist of paritranaya, sadhunam vinasaya chadushkritam, saving the devotees and killing the demons. To demonstrate these activities, the Lord called for devotees from different parts of the universe. There are many devotees who are elevated to the higher planetary systems. Prapya punya kritam lokam usitva sasvati samam suchinam srimatam gehe yoga brasto vijayate. The unsuccessful yogi, after many, many years of enjoyment on the planets of the pious living entities, is born into a family of righteous people or into a family of rich aristocracy. Bhagavad Gita 6.41. Some devotees, having failed to complete the process of devotional service, are promoted to the heavenly planets, to which the pious are elevated, and after enjoying their, they may be directly promoted to the place where the Lord's pastimes are going on. When Lord Krishna was to appear, the denizens of the heavenly planets were invited to see the pastimes of the Lord, and thus it is stated here that the members of the Yadu and Vrishni dynasties and the inhabitants of Vrindavana were demigods, or almost as good as demigods. Even those who externally helped the activities of Kamsa belong to the higher planetary systems. The imprisonment and release of Vasudeva and the killing of various demons were all manifestations of the pastimes of the Lord. And because the devotees would be pleased to see these activities personally, they were all invited to take birth as friends and relatives of these families, as confirmed in the prayers of Kunti. Bhagavatam 1:8-19. Nato natya daro yata. The Lord has to play the part of a demon killer and a friend, son, and brother to his devotees, and thus these devotees were all summoned. Text 64. Are we almost finished?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we are at time now.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's stop right there. Text 64. And continue tomorrow. Are there any questions or comments? Any questions or comments? So here, there's a very interesting point here. It says, the imprisonment and release of Vasudeva and the killing of various demons were all manifestations of the pastimes of the Lord, and because the devotees would be pleased to see these activities personally, they were all invited to take birth as friends and relatives of these families, as confirmed in the prayers of Kunti, Bhagavatam 1:8-19. Nato natya daro yata. The Lord was to play the part of a demon killer and a friend, son, and brother to his devotees. And thus these devotees were all summoned. Okay, so that means that it's a great, what you would call, um, a great a great play. and so many exalted personalities in the higher planetary systems came to see it and enjoyed what was going on. It's really because very, very what you would call uh, amazing pastimes going on. So the imprisonment and release of Vasudeva and the killing of various demons were all manifestations of the pastimes of the Lord, and because the devotees would be pleased to see these activities personally, they were all invited to take birth as friends and relatives of these families, as confirmed in the prayers of Kunti. Nato Natya Dharmo Yata. The Lord was to play the part of a demon, like killer, and a friend, son, and brother to his devotees. And thus, these devotees were all summoned. So this is a great play, a great pastime that's taking place here. Okay, well, we'll stop right there. Are there any questions or comments? So the takeaway for today, the imprisonment and release of Vasudeva and the killing of various demons were all manifestations of the pastimes of the Lord. And because the devotees would be pleased to see these activities personally, they were all invited to take birth as friends and relatives of these families, as confirmed in the prayers of Kunti, Bhagavatam 1:8-19. Nato Natya Daro Yata. The Lord was to play the part of a demon killer and a friend, son, and brother to his devotees. And thus these devotees were all summoned. So, this is like a big production or play that's taking place. And it's very, very, let's say, transcendental. Okay, well, that's the end for today. Any questions, comments? So our takeaway for today. The unsuccessful yogi, after many, many years of enjoyment on the planet of the pious living entity, is born into a family of righteous people or into a family of rich aristocracy. Some devotees, having failed to complete the process of devotional service, are promoted to the heavenly planet, to which the pious are elevated. And after enjoying there, they may be directly promoted to the place where the Lord's pastimes are going on. When Lord Krishna was to appear The denizens of the heavenly planet were invited to see the pastimes of the Lord, and thus it is stated here that the members of the Yadu and Vrishni dynasties and the inhabitants of Vrindavana were demigods or almost as good as demigods. Even those who externally helped the activities of Kamsa belonged to the higher planetary system. The imprisonment and release of Vasudeva and the killing of various demons were all manifestations of the pastimes of the Lord, and because the devotees would be pleased to see these activities personally, they were all invited to take birth as friends and relatives of these families, as confirmed in the prayers of Kunti. Nato Natya Daro Yata. The Lord was to play the part of a demon killer and a friend, son, and brother to his devotees. And thus these devotees were all summoned. That is a very great play taking place. Okay, all glories to Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Stop right there. And it says the Lord was to play the part of a demon killer and a friend, son, and brother to his devotees. And thus these devotees were all summoned. Okay. Haribol. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Any questions or comments? Thank you very much, my dear devotees. Please have a very happy day today. Chant Hare Krishna and be happy. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.